Welcome back to Tabletop Tactics, you bosses. It's myself, Lawrence, Mr. Chef here to my right, and Mr. Beard to my left, here to talk to you about the all-new, just freshly dropped, not rave scene,
I get it.
the autumn balanced data slate for Warhammer 40,000 10th edition, which is quite the bombshell. In fact, we're all taking cover here because these changes are rather large. In fact, every faction has had some significant points changes, either for the better or for the worse. And on top of that, we've had some core rule changes, including changes right out of the rulebook itself.
Pretty quick.
Yeah, pretty quick. What are we, 2.5 months into the edition? Yeah. 3 months?
It's quite a big, there's a lot of pages of changes.
A lot of pages of changes.
It's not just like the quick adjustment here and there. It's quite a lot.
It is. So what we thought we'd do today is go over these by the numbers. So we're going to go over the actual balance data slate itself, and then we will have a discussion afterwards around the points. We won't go over all of the points individually because there's so many, but we can give you a really strong gist of what's importantly gone up or down. So first up, we've got core rules changes. They advise immediately in the first paragraph that these are going to be official immediately in all of their official events, including Crusade events. So the expectation is that you use them.
I would expect these to become out as an errata document.
Yeah, exactly.
In all honesty.
I agree, yeah.
So it's not even a case of, oh, but you've got to keep track of like the balance data slate if you're using the app, if you've got if you're getting the rules online. These, I'm hoping, will be baked in.
Yeah.
So yeah,
it should be because it's core changes here.
Yeah, you'd think so.
You'd think so. Yeah. Right. So on page 28, devastating wounds. Delete the example from this ability and change the text to, effectively, each time an attack is made, it ignores all saves. So it's not a mortal wound anymore. It ignores all saves, including invulnerable saves. So there are no saves allowed whatsoever. But of course, the key difference now being that the wounds don't spill over.
Correct. Yeah.
Significant change?
It is. It's much better. How? Right. Where are we getting mortal wounds at this point as well? Are they
predominantly devastating wounds?
Yeah.
Sure.
That's kind of it. Like, you know, there's a thing, you know, like abilities, you know, like Hammer of Wrath on Jump Pack Marines and
tank shot,
tank
grenades,
things like that. And psychic powers, like from like Vortex of Doom, things like that.
For me, it feels much more, dare I say it, realistic in our sci-fi board game. You'd expect that tank shock would be. The wounds would probably carry over into a squad. Yeah. But I do like this change. It is nice that you're not sort of getting these extra wounds over just sort of for the sake of it. It is more balanced this way, but it also feels a bit better as well.
It feels more like the shot or the punch or the attack or whatever you want to call it is punching through the armor rather than suddenly going.
Yeah.
Now, don't get me wrong, because I never got the chance to roll a 6 for my railgun.
Oh.
Because there's just something about that I've been asking for that for like since 3rd edition. It's just like the railgun should just go dum 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 dum.
Yeah.
But alas, it's not meant to be in any of my editions that I've played, which is very sad. But I'm not going to miss doing things like, so I rolled 3 6s to wound with my Doomsday Cannon, that's 12 wounds.
Yeah.
Oh, but my guys only have 1 wound each. I just killed 12 of them.
Yeah. It's much more immersive.
Yeah. Things like that are cool, but they're not balanced.
Yeah.
Like, and that's the thing. It's like, you know, if you they're saying use it in a crusade, but if you want to be like, let's just go real wacky with stuff, you know, let's have laser beams like,
death rays,
everything exploding, go for it. But I think from a overall balance perspective, I love the irony, though, that this is the change, and 4 months ago, I can't believe that Games Workshop have introduced rules which ignore invulnerable saves, and now it's like this will be seen as this is like an amazing balance change. It's like that's the world we live in, but it is much better for it. It also means that there's a lot of weapons which now no longer do everything.
Yeah. It was too abusable, wasn't it? Let's
massively
face it.
so.
There were too many things which I think had devastating wounds on them, weapon types. And, you know, especially with the rise of things like Aeldari, where you can specifically pick certain roles, it just made it too easy to go off and therefore too easy to balance. So this change actually, I think, is a pretty elegant change.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's a shame that they've had to do it at all.
Ending.
You know, but yeah, it's super ending. Exactly.
The best thing about it is that it doesn't punish armies that are like, well, I've got, you know, because I've seen a few things bandied about with devastating wounds because it is like will be, whatever, a hot topic, and people saying like it should just be devastating, and I've sort of think, oh, maybe it should be devastating wounds X, where it only a certain amount, but then there's some, like Deathwatch, we could get access to devastating wounds, striking scorpions. There's a number of things like combi weapons. If they suddenly say, oh yeah, combi weapons are, you can only do like a maximum of 6 with a unit, you'd be like, then my unit of combi weapons isn't like, when you spike, it's really good fun, because you go, yeah, I did like 7 or 8 mortal wounds. It doesn't punish that now.
No.
It will. I think it will have a little bit of a knock-on effect for certain rules, which are like 4 up Feel No Pains against mortal wounds.
Of course.
But that's the trade-off that I think the greater game has to kind of deal with.
Although I'm not surprised that might also, because Custodes were a bit of a bogeyman, weren't they? And they had that Feel No Pain against the mortal wounds.
Yeah. Now Devastating Wounds actually is
devastating against them. So that's also a really interesting change. And Custodes have had quite a lot of changes as well, which we will get to. So let's move on to the next one. So we've got modifying Stratagem CP cost. This is also pretty massive. I mean, they've clearly stated here that basically, reducing stratagems to being free is very difficult to balance. And stratagems, the special moves of 40k, have always been quite difficult to balance, it seems.
Even with only
CP's gone up, gone down, and we've seen this across, the last 2 editions of 40k prior to this. This is the first edition of 40k where it's been so prevalent that characters can reduce the stratagem cost to nothing. And it has become, pretty abused competitively, I think we can all agree. Yeah. So now what have they done?
Well, think about how good it was in 9th edition with like how many times we would say like, Admech getting a free stratagem like once per game. Oh, that's pretty powerful.
That was massive.
Like, every turn.
Yeah, it was massive.
Yeah, it was huge.
Massive. And now, it was too much. It was way too much. So what they've decided to do is obviously changing it in all of the data cards that currently have it would be pretty tricky. So what they've done, I think, which is actually quite clever, is they've changed it so that if the stratagem's not named, so i.e. if it's not reduce X stratagem to 0, it's reduce A stratagem to 0, it has to be a battle tactic stratagem. Now, most people, if you're like me, don't look at what the types of stratagems are, because up until this point in 10th, there's not really been much relevance in whether it's a strategic ploy or a battle tactic,
the
right?
only time it's ever been relevant for those categories is in Crusade
and
for Adeptus Mechanicus characters in 9th edition.
Right.
That was the only time it was ever relevant.
Yeah, otherwise you just don't look at it. So
I think maybe there was like a Tau relic which allowed you to sort of go, a strategic ploy or a war gear stratagem you could do for like free once per game. It's something like that.
But again, when quite bespoke and very specific to 1 or 2 factions.
Whereas now, I love the fact that you have to actually look at the stratagem type now.
Yes, or it has a relevance.
Yeah, it has a relevance. It's worth pointing out that a lot of the very potent stratagems are strategic ploys or epic deeds.
Yeah, exactly.
Command reroll as a battle tactic.
Yeah, so you could make a reroll free. But that's far less interesting than some of the strats that were being bandied around.
You can't you can't double dip on Undying Legions for the Necrons anymore. You can't double dip on your Genestealer Cults being able to pick up multiple units. I think some of the demons ones where it's like, people would deploy Be'lakor and 4 big demons and then pick up 4 of them, so there's just Be'lakor left on the battlefield turn 1, but you can't shoot Be'lakor, then turn 2 they all deep strike within 6 of Be'lakor. You can't do that anymore. So there's lots of little changes like that which will require you to look at what the type of stratagem is before you just kind of do it willy-nilly. But the beauty is there's only 6 and a couple of core ones to worry about.
That's right. Now they have also got, at the very last part of this, which is also important to point out, is they do say that this does not apply to the Aircast Colossus, Striding Colossus, or Towering Wraith construct abilities. So,
that doesn't mean you suddenly get to take Titans and use 1 CP strats on them. You do still have to pay the 4 CP that you required.
Correct.
It's worth pointing out it is also for like your Vect-like stratagems as well.
Yep.
They use the Calidus as the example. So it's,
that's right.
If you're using a stratagem like that, so you go, I'm going to use a command reroll. I go, great, I can do that on that, but there's certain abilities, which I think is a nice balancing factor, because then all of a sudden you've taken these probably quite powerful stratagems, removed a combo or a way to zhuzh them up a bit, and then double punish them. So I like the fact that they've kind of thought about that aspect as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So there we go. The other thing it adds is stratagems that can be used more than once per phase per turn. We should also mention this part as well. If they allow you to use a stratagem, even if another unit has been targeted by that stratagem this phase, that also needs to be a battle tactic stratagem. So because you just think there could have been a loophole otherwise. So they've tidied that up nicely. Okay, let's move on to the next part. Overwatch. Massive, massive, massive thing in 10th. I think we all knew that it would be. This is a weird one for me. It's not actually, it has made a significant change, which we'll go over in a moment, but it's not actually affected the core issue, which was Torrent. It has to a degree, but Torrent is still ultimately able to do what it was doing, which for me feels still a bit off. But anyway, let's talk about it. The CP is still 1 CP. It's done in your opponent's move or charge phase as normal. The only thing that they've changed is you can only target an enemy unit that's visible. So you can't do it on a unit which is moved out of line of sight.
But you can do it before they move out of line of sight anyway.
That's true.
Start the moving phase. Honestly, it's changed nothing.
Yeah,
Changed nothing.
And then it says you cannot target a Titanic unit with this strategy.
The Knights can't Overwatch anymore.
Yeah, so that, I mean, you know.
That's fine.
That's fine. But I agree with you, Chef. For me, I still think it's going to be a big problem.
I was fully expecting them to increase the CP cost by 1.
Yeah.
I think that would have probably helped.
Yeah.
Without like changing it so much that it like said you can't use torrent weapons and it becoming a little bit too complicated. I think increasing the cost, so you can't do it early game necessarily.
Yeah.
And also because it's more likely you'd have to put all of your CP eggs in one basket to do the Overwatch, it would sort of feel like that is the most important thing to do. You're going to spend the majority of your CP on Overwatch, and then you probably don't have any left afterwards.
Yeah.
But that wasn't enough of a change for me.
No.
Yeah.
It is a strategic ploy stratagem, just in case anyone was wondering. So it's not a battle tactic, so it can't be reduced to 3. But
I'd have liked to have seen them, as you say, put it to 2 CP.
Yeah.
I'd have liked to have seen reverse heroic intervention. The heroic intervention is 2 CP and never gets used because it's too expensive. It wouldn't make Overwatch, it will never be used at 2 CP. It's like, no, but it's now a really big choice to make. I mean, personally, if it was me, I would have made it, I think the visible is good because it just kind of neuters things like, you know, like a cheeky Desolator unit and on Titanic units, good because they are bristling with guns. Like I've been overwatched by a Storm Surge and it's just like, I'll just, you're hitting on 6s. It's like, I'll just be here, you know, but then it's re-rolling like Oath of the Moment, all that stuff. I would have made it so that you can never re-roll it.
Yeah.
I always go far too harsh with my sort of perceived changes. I'd have gone 2 CP, no rerolls, visible. I'd have left it on Titanic at this point.
Okay.
But I would have made it so that you can only do it when they finish a normal advance or forward move, not before they start. So you can go, I'm out of line of sight, lol.
Yeah.
Because you just like line the shot, like, damn it, we've missed the opportunity.
Yeah.
Rather than, imagine being on a battlefield and you're just like, you're in like a Mexican standoff with someone and then they don't move and you just go, whatever.
Yeah.
You know, now I realise that obviously in a warfare you would absolutely do that, but in a I go, you go system, to basically just stop your opponent from doing anything before they even get a chance to try and counter that by going, I know you can overwatch me with this brick of warp flaming units, but I'm going to have to advance to get out of line of sight. That means I can't shoot a charge. But I'm going to do it. Yeah. Whereas now it's like, you just shoot me anyway. And it doesn't remove the torrent issue, like you guys say.
Yeah, I think, upping it to 2 CP would have been a good play. Personally, I think the torrent is still way too much. I would have actually changed it that torrents can fire, but you have to roll a 6 to activate it first. So then you roll for your amount of
6
hits.
A torrent.
So if you've got a big unit of flamers, you roll. If you've got a unit of 10 flamers, you roll 10d6. Any 6s you get, then you can roll how many hits you get. That is just a really simple, obvious fix in my mind. Why not? Because otherwise those flamer death squads are just viciously good. And there's still only 1 CP.
Yeah, like
it's just like, okay.
Units of flamers, units of warp flamers, aggressors.
If you're a combat army just trying to get up the table and they just blob, pop that big, couple of units of those midfield, you're like, oh.
Units of Dire Avengers, none of them care about that change. No. They just go, great, this is actually a benefit for us because now I can't have that used against me by a knight or a desolator squad. So I've actually got a better opportunity in some instances whilst not receiving any changes myself. And realistically, yeah, a knight overwatching is a bit like so many guns, but it's not quite the oppressiveness as Dire Avengers hitting on 4s for free because of Usman. You know, a unit of 10 Warp Flamers. Like that's where the problem is.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know,
and that will continue to be abused.
Yeah, I don't see that.
It's not
being,
really fixed it.
No, I don't see that fixing anything.
And this is again, like this is only from a purely competitive point of view. If you're not running those things all the time, you're just having fun. It doesn't really matter.
Right. I'd argue that Overwatch does ruin the fun if you're not playing competitively.
Well, it can. Yeah,
I just moved my cool combat squad
dead.
4s out of dead because of flamers.
Yeah,
it's sad. It's a shame.
But then that implies that your opponent's also really building into that as well. And they know, if they know that you're bringing a combat army, then maybe they could not load up on the flamers.
If you're using a unit of flamers and you're not using Overwatch, you're kind of being silly.
Yeah, you are. You absolutely are. So right, what we've got next is insane bravery. This is a significant change. This is really going back to what it used to be in 9th edition, effectively. You can only do it once per game. You now need to do it before the battle shock test is made. So that means that you can't fail it and then choose to pass it after the fact. Again, massively significant change. It is still only 1 CP, but again, you can only do it once per game. And then of course you automatically pass your battle shock test. So I think there was definitely a consensus that battle shock wasn't doing enough because of this stratagem. Because if something significant happens, would be a risk to you not getting an objective, or you really need a stratagem to go off, you just go, cool, I'll just spend a CP. And again, it was so cheap. Now being able to do it just the once,
you got to preempt it.
You really do need to think about it, and that does mean that in theory, once or twice a game, you could have a moment where you've got a battle shocked unit on an objective and you lose that objective as a result now. Whereas prior. What are your thoughts, Chef?
I think it will be impactful, but not too much.
No, that's not massively impactful.
And I just think that Battle Shock, really easy change. The timing just needs to change.
Yes.
You recover from Battle Shock at the end of the command phase. So after objective scoring, after stratagem use, things like that. So then all of a sudden you go, well, I'm Battle Shocked from an opponent's ability last turn. Damn, I can't hold that objective. Now that all of a sudden that opens up so much utility for so many different units.
The problem that you can pass it so that you can still.
The other alternative is you don't auto pass in your command phase. You have to roll to pass it, but I think that could get clunky and slow. Just changing the timing so that you recover at the end of the command phase after objectives are scored, because then all of a sudden a 40-point Psychomancer may then warrant being a bit more expensive, but would actually see use, because then you suddenly go, you see that unit on an objective, Battle Shock, Adeptus Mechanicus, they've got a really cool stratagem, which is, make a enemy unit within range of an objective Battle Shocked on, take a Battle Shock check on a 4+, you can use it, and you go, okay, I mean, it's cool, it's cute, it's nifty, like, fine, it's fine, but now you could do that and potentially just go, now all of a sudden, because I've done it in my command phase, all of a sudden, not only have I flipped that objective to my control, you cannot possibly hold it until after your next turn, which could have a huge impact on the game and brings Battle Shock into actual relevance, I think.
It would make it more exciting.
It would.
If they made that little change.
Makes that little test, you go, oh my goodness, this is a really
big time. Because I think the Battle Shock mechanic is cool and OC is cool, but it feels like a lot of the time it's quite easy to get around.
Yeah, you just get around it very easily.
Which is a bit of a shame, because I personally really like the mechanic. I think it's a really good addition.
I think it is.
In terms of that, I do like it's now once per battle, because I found myself using that strat a fair bit in games before, and not using my cool power-up strats, which are actually way more fun. So I do quite like that sort of being taken away, and it's just it leads to more exciting strategies.
I completely agree. Okay, well, let's move on from Battle Shock now. Now we go into the factions themselves. There are some really massive changes to some of these. Custodes. The biggest thing is the unit size. The other thing that they've done is the unwavering sentinel stratagem. They've changed to an epic deed stratagem, because I believe it was a battle tactic.
It was a 2 CP battle tactic, which gave you fight first on an objective, which is what made Custodes so good.
So good.
It's like basically the melee counter. It's like no one could run melee armies because you might play against Custodes.
That's right.
And they just go, I fight first. Oh, okay. I die.
Yeah.
Like fight first is an incredibly powerful mechanic. Now it costs them 2 CP.
Yeah, that's right. As a result, just to sort of see what these changes are like, I'm actually going to be playing Stig with the World Eaters versus a melee army against the Custodes. And then with lots of points drops and all of the other things changes, we'll see how that works out.
That's coming to Freeview, isn't it?
It is, yeah. So you guys can watch that here very soon.
Also, whilst we're here very quickly, we're able to do this State of Play because of On Demand.
It's true.
It's brought to you.
It's brought to you by On Demand, yeah.
All of our On Demand members allow us to make all these videos. So thank you to On Demand bosses. If you want to sign up and get access to all of our videos, table.tactics.tv. That's where you go.
Yeah, and we got a lot of videos.
Join it!
A lot of videos, including a lot more coming with some new releases stuff, which is really, really cool. So that aside, what we have is the Custodian Guard data sheet, the Custodian Warden data sheet, and the Virtus Praetors. The Guard and the Wardens have gone down to unit size 4 to 5. The Praetors have gone from 2 to 3. So you're not getting these 10 phalanx blobs anymore.
There's two reasons why I like this.
Tell me.
One, because it's more balanced.
Yeah.
Two, why would there need to be 10 of them?
Yeah,
they're like
these are Custodians.
10 of them is an army.
The ultimate creation of the Emperor, and there's 10 of them doing a task. Up to 5, that's as much as they should need, I think.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty massive sweeping change.
Yes.
I mean, I'd love to hear from the Custodes players out there. I'm sure that there's going to be some disappointment because this is a big hit, but you're still going to be really good, high quality units, but you're not getting the abuse of that stratagem anymore, and you're not able to have these practically unkillable blobs anymore because, of course, the mortal wounds effect has been changed massively now with the devastating wounds. So people are going to be able to kill you. That's point one. But you're not going to be able to get as much value out of your command points anymore. But you're still going to be really good in combat. You're still going to be really killy. That hasn't changed. But it'll be interesting to see how this pans up.
Yeah, I think with the Wardens as well, it makes sense because that was a weird complaint, or not complaint. It wasn't a weird complaint, but it was a weird quirk because they were units of 3 and 6.
Yeah.
But they came in boxes of 5.
Right.
Because they're built from the Custodian Guard squad. So now 4 to 5 makes sense because it's like, well, if you build a shield captain, you've got 4. If you don't, you've got the 5. I also like the change to Virtus Praetors. Now, I'm sure some of you are immediately going like, why did they reduce the unit size? They already won't use it. It's because they made them cheaper. So Games Workshop have fought ahead and gone, if we make this cheaper but leave them to run around in units of 6, that could be a problem. Yeah. Now it's like, you can take them and they are cheaper. You just can't spam them. Yeah. You can still run 9 of them, which is pretty gnarly. Which is a lot, but it's to stop them from doing things like that. So I like that little aspect of 4-4.
Yeah, agreed. So moving on from the Custodes, we have the Mechanicus next. Just 2 changes, but again, fairly significant, especially in an edition where there's prevalent cover. Scutari Rangers go to a save of 4+, and an invulnerable save of 5+. The Vanguard also have the same, 4+, 5+. So your saves have improved. That would improve their staying power, but the biggest thing that goes with the Mechanicus is there's some sweeping points changes, generally in the downward direction, which means that you could spam these things en masse, which would be quite interesting to see how that pans out.
The interesting thing with that is that there's a lot of units that in a weird way benefit a lot from battle line. Yeah. So that can be anything from the Sulphur Hounds making a charge and they get a bonus to the mortal wounds they dish out when they make the charge. I think the intention here is to make all of those battle line buffing abilities from other units more usable, because I've found when I use the Dark Mech, it's nice, but I'm not taking many Rangers and Vanguard because it's like, nah.
Yeah, not 125 points were you?
But
like,
in combination
with
80, with the points reductions everywhere, you can actually buff up those units quite a lot by having more battle line.
Much more appealing.
I kind of like that there's actually a use for battle line with this army anyway.
Yeah.
And it kind of makes sense because they're all kind of connected with their comms links and stuff. So absolutely. I suppose
that's the theme of it.
Yeah,
it's the new sphere. Like the more of them on, like the chanting, and it's like the prayer mechanicum. It's like it all buffs them up. Yeah. My only concern is that Mechanicum is already a very expensive army to buy money-wise. Yeah. So now all of a sudden you've got people which are probably going, I've got to buy another 400 points, and that's probably about £400, or $955, or $12,000 dues.
Yeah. Yes.
It's. I would have. I don't know about the AdMech because I know a lot of people say, just put them back to Ballistic Skill 2, it will be fine. No, it really won't be fine. But we've discussed about the Doctrina. I mean, ignoring the fact that their detachment rule is literal garbage, the Doctrinas I think would just work as well because it's in a movement-based game, it's are you in your deployment zone? No, then half your army it won't do anything.
Yeah.
I would have liked it if you are in range of an objective that you're controlling for the Protector, and for Conqueror, if you're attacking a unit that is in range of an objective that you're not controlling.
That makes sense.
Because then it's like, cool, +1 AP when you're trying to shift someone off of an objective. On a las cannon, oh, AP 4, that's quite nice. On your basic guys' guns, which are AP 0, it's cute.
Yeah. It's quite nice.
But it's a nice
quite fluffy
little,
as well.
Exactly.
Defends the relic at STC.
Defend the relic.
Attack the relic STC.
Exactly. I don't think that would have been too much to ask for.
No,
Having
simple
said
fix.
that, I think the nice little buffs, and as you say, being able to take more back, like, if you think of it this way, if you were not running them because they were so rubbish, and now with the point structure, you can probably put in some of the units that you've dropped without needing to go out and buy more.
Yeah, true. That's true.
So it kind of comes around.
Yeah. Okay, so moving on from the Mechanicus, we have one change for the Aeldari, other than the points, of course. And that's, of course, to the big boogeyman stratagem, which is Phantasm. You can now only target infantry with it. So no more Wraith Knights, no more even jet bikes. It's just infantry. That is a massive change to that stratagem, because obviously that was the one which was being primarily abused. But yes, there's also been some significant points changes, generally in the upward direction as well. So Aeldari have been shaken. Have they been shaken enough to knock them off the top spot? Well, with some changes to devastating wounds as well, maybe, because that was also part of the issue. But I still think they're going to be very, very good. But the points changes are fairly significant on some of their star units, so we'll have to see. We'll have to see. Moving on to the agents of the Imperium, we have a change to the exaction squad data sheet. There are now a limit of 9 exaction vigilance, and the war gear options are that you can have up to 2 exaction vigilance that can each have their Arbites combat shotguns replaced with one of the following, etc., etc.
Basically, people were running a 5-man unit. It was 35 points.
Yeah.
And you were running them in any Imperial army.
Yeah.
Because they were like, what do I need to hold my home field objective? 35 points. It was a 35-point unit that had a 5-up feel no pain.
Yeah.
And a 4-up save.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden, you stick them in cover or behind cover, and it's like, they're taking a little bit more than they should for a 35-point unit. Like, Imperial Knights were just going, yeah, I'll take 2 of those.
Yeah. It's cheap chaff.
Action monkeys, strategic reserve, move on. It's like, oh, I happen to draw teleport home. All right, that's useful.
It was almost Loyal 32-esque in a way.
That?
I don't know.
My phone.
Oh, just your phone. Okay, nothing important.
Okay, later.
It was almost Loyal 32-esque in a way.
Yeah, it was. So yeah, making them a
10
10-man unit and with a points increase that they've received as well just makes them much more difficult to fit in. Yeah.
Okay, right, next one is a big one. You Death Guard fans. Oh, you've been thrown a bone, a corrupted toxic bone. I actually really like this change. It's not really a change, it's an add-on. You get something on top of your detachment rule, which, let's face it, wasn't really that great. They're not bad, but not that great. So now you're getting a lot more. So what we've got is spread the sickness detachment rule. So you add the following to the start of this rule. During the declare battle formation step, you can get to select one of these abilities. So basically, at the beginning of the game, you go, right, well, I'm going to have this because this is going to be really good against this opponent. First up, you've got a -1 to the ballistic skill and weapon skill of your opponent if they're in contagion range. So that's a pretty significant debuff, which goes hand in hand with the -1 toughness, which is still in effect. Second, you've got the rattle joint ague, which is a -1 to their AP if they're in contagion range. Again, this is particularly significant, and I'll tell you why. This is just opinion, of course, but Death Guards seem to be, and they seem to play the best currently, as being, you know, full of demon engines and actually getting up close and fighting in combat. So really, they're kind of a melee army at this stage. If you can reduce the AP, which generally speaking in 10th, the AP in melee is not anywhere near as good as it is at range, this will help them kill a little bit better in combat.
Sorry, do you mean reduce their AP or reduce their armor save?
Sorry, reduce their armor save rather, yeah. That will help you get those combat attacks through. So that's quite a good one, I think, if you are building a melee heavy Death Guard list, which if you're trying to get into contagion range, just sort of makes sense that you are. Then you have the Scabrous Soul Rot, which is worsening the leadership and objective control characteristics of models in the enemy unit by 1, again, if it's in contagion range. That is also, you know, powerful, but you can only choose the one. So depending on what you're facing and what army you're building, it will determine your choice.
The fact that you can do it in the declare formation step is good. You don't have to write it on your army list. You just get to go, I'm playing against guard. You know what? Making them no objective lower or really bad leadership could be quite useful. I'm playing against Custodes. I'll be taking -1 to your armor save. We were discussing earlier. It's like, poor Tau.
Yeah.
I mean, they're already in trouble if there's a Death Guard in contagion range, but now they're just like, oh no, I'm hitting on 5s and 6s.
Yeah, it's really cool. It's a big bone to be thrown to the Death Guard, and I think hopefully it will mean that they can start to compete and have a bit more fun in Tabletop.
I think it's going to open up lots of different styles of lists as well, because I think with all of the new options you've got there, it does mean that far more is viable now, because realistically before these changes it was all about, if you're playing competitively, it's all about Mortarion and Demon Engines. That's kind of where you wanted to go. But in combining that with some pretty substantial points drops that they've been given as well, all of a sudden,
including on the Demon Engines, which are already their better assets.
Yeah, we'll talk about that later. There's all of a sudden a lot of options that you can realistically run if you want to play like match play games, which is great because Death Guard got a pretty rotten bone in 10th edition, unfortunately.
It is. Okay, so let's move on to Deathwatch. Dragonfire round stratagem. The effect now is until the end of the phase, and the red text is bolt weapons, of which they have an asterisk and have listed out all of the bolt weapons.
You mean the special bolt rounds can't be used on las cannons anymore?
Yeah,
what a shame!
No. Hellfire round stratagem. Guess what? It's the same change. Okay, only on bolt weapons, which just makes sense. And then finally, the Kraken round stratagem. Guess what?
Can I use it on my las cannon?
No, it's bolt weapons.
Good.
Of which are specified.
I approve of this blending of narrative and balance.
And that's all of it. Right, okay. Next we have Genestealer Cults. Again, some significant changes here, specifically to the Cult Ambush Army rule, which obviously had some abuse. So in red text now, if your army faction is Genestealer Cults, each time an enemy unit each time a unit with this ability is destroyed, roll 1d6, adding 1 to the result if it is a battle line unit, and adding 1 to the result if it is the first or second battle round. On a 5+, add a new unit to your army identical to the one, and the rest of the text is the same. So they have reduced the ability to ultimately bring the units back. If you're a battle line unit, it will be easier to do so, but you're not going to be getting as many free points as you were previously getting.
Battle line not coming back automatically is good. I always said it was silly. I have some concerns about this, and I may be biased as a Genestealer Cult player. That is a 50% reduction in your army capability, in your army special rule, alongside points increases, which again I think is justified. I feel the two combined could be a bit much. It's also really, really punishing if you go second. Because if you die in your turn, if you're going second, you deep strike on the board with some stuff. They might kill something. Great, or they might fail a charge. As we all know, Genestealer Cult players, that is more often than not what happens. You come up, you fail some charges, your opponent then kills you, and because you've dared to go second, because you rolled lower than your opponent, your army rule is now worse for bringing that unit back in the subsequent turn. On the flip side of things, if you go first, it's not like a win more button, but you now have a better chance, because it's like, well, I go first, in turn 2, I deep strike, I fail the charge, I get killed, because you roll immediately. So it's punishing if you go second, which I really dislike. A 50% reduction I think is fine, because some things like aberrants were just silly. I think the battle line coming back on a 3+ in turn 1 and 2, fine. It will change up how Genestealer Cult players play their army. I feel like now you're probably only going to deep strike 1 or 2 units at most, and everything else is going to start on the board to basically just say, I dare you to kill me. I dare you to kill me, because then I can deep strike closer to you whilst getting the use of my army rule. Yeah, I don't know. I'll need to play around with it. On paper, it feels like it's a good change and it's a justified change.
Yeah.
I'm interested to see how it combines with the points changes and how that's going to work in scenarios where you end up going second against certain armies.
Yeah.
So you end up going second against things like Tau or Knights. You're like, oh, this is...
So it could be a rough ride for you.
It could potentially be a rough ride, unless you roll really, really well. You're not allowed to use Genestealer Cults because you roll 5s and 6s all day anyway, so it doesn't matter.
I'd make all of the charges.
Yeah.
So the second change is to the Attilan Jackal's data sheets with their Outrider Gangs ability, and it changes the range that they can be set up wholly within 9 inches.
It used to be 6, so it's now just easier. It's just easy to come up, which makes perfect sense given it's now harder for you to get blips on the board.
Next, my beloved Grey Knights, arguably one of my favourite armies in the game. They've only had one change, and that's to the Haloed in Soulfire Stratagem. They've now made it a strategic ploy, so obviously get around it being free.
Shall I tell you what the really, really frustrating thing about that is? They just didn't need to change it because their turn A stratagem into a 0 CP thing is once per game.
Oh, is it once per game
once
anyway?
Per game, not once per battle round or once per turn. So they've changed that on a unit that could only do it once per game anyway. Yeah. So it's like I'd have rather they'd have left it as a battle tactic or made that change, but also let them do it more than once per game.
Yes, that would be the other way.
It's just fine.
Anyway, that is what it is. They have seen some significant points changes.
That's true.
Which is quite interesting as well. Right, Imperial Knights. Bondsman abilities is first up. The red text says the Armiger model you selected is affected by that Bondsman ability. That is specifically it's making it an Armiger model rather than it could be given to a knight before, is my understanding.
No, you did it to an Armiger and it also affected the knight.
And it affected the knight.
So you got double duty.
Exactly.
Now you get no duty.
Yeah, so just for the Armigers. Yeah. Right, Thunderstomp stratagem changed to an epic deed. There you go, rather than battle tactic. Trophy claim stratagem CP cost is now changed to 2. And the Valiant Last Stand stratagem is also changed to 2.
Yeah. Those are all fine, especially given that their army rule is get free CP for doing something really quite simple. Yeah. So it's not necessarily the end of the world that those have gone up in CP. Yeah.
Now I feel like I might have missed over, yes I did, the Ruins Invisibility, because this also affects knights specifically. So the red text here is towering models that are within this terrain feature can also see out of it normally. So this is an old towing cover style thing here. So basically if a knight has his toe in a ruin, he will be able to see through it.
But he is now affected by obscuring or ruins.
Correct.
Towering no longer looks over it. They do get the benefit of it.
They do.
Because they've removed, basically only aircraft can see over stuff now.
Correct.
Which makes sense.
Yeah.
So it just means that a knight can't stand at the back and shoot through 5 buildings.
Right.
That's a great change from an aesthetic point of view because it means that you don't need to be like, I've got all of my, there are no windows in the 41st millennium. I hate that so much. I understand why it is in there, but aesthetically it displeases me greatly.
Agreed.
But it also means that you are now needing to go, well, if I go into the building, I'm not needing to be wholly within it, which is a downside for other vehicles. I can be within it, not touching.
Yes.
Fletcher.
Yeah. I'm touching the terrain.
I'm touching the terrain. And then I try and shoot him back and he says, but I'm behind the building.
Yeah, no.
Wild accusations.
No, you've got to be
wild accusations that happened in a previous league. You can go watch it. No, it's a really good change in terms of knights. Big knights now need to maneuver better. They don't just get to stand there and go, I can see through windows and across the board.
It makes it more tactical.
But also it means they get the benefit of it as well. So there is an upside to it. Like, yes, you can't just shoot willy-nilly, but you can go, well, I'm hiding. Like, you cannot shoot me. You can imagine like this knight just sort of like bending down, taking a prayer, and then like standing up and they're like, oh no.
Yeah, I also really like the idea of like a knight's foot suddenly crashing through a wall, going into the ruin and then looking down and through it, and you're like, ah!
It's a much better change. I think it will remove a lot of the jank issues with
Yeah, because that's the thing. It was just getting a bit janky, wasn't it? Right, we go over to Leagues of Votann. It's a good change. It's a good change. It will help them. I just feel it's a bit, I don't know, easy, a bit... I don't know. It's not a very exciting change, but it is obviously better. So basically what they're doing is they're increasing the number of units that you can give judgment tokens to before the game. So if you're playing Strike Force, which is what most people are that are concerned about these balance changes are, which is 2,000 points, you can now pick 4 units, and each of those units start with 2 judgment tokens. Also, they've got in further red text, if at the start of any of your command phases, any of those units have been destroyed, you gain a number of CP as per the rest of the rule. So look, it is a significant change. It allows them to, kill things better ultimately on more enemy units from the get-go. I don't know, it just feels a bit, to me, it feels a bit bland. I guess that's the word I'm looking for. It feels a bit bland. I don't know if there could have been a cooler, like, what they did with the Death Guard, they added on something which I thought was ultimately very cool. I'd like to have seen them perhaps added something on rather than just modifying the number of units, but maybe that's just me.
Votann a bit of a weird one. I don't think they really know what to do with them. Because
no, I agree, yeah.
It feels like 13 units.
Yeah. They were so the other way in 9th edition.
Yeah.
And they put so many people off because they were so powerful. They've now tilted completely the other way. Now they're trying to sort of like go back and get to a middle ground. But I feel like this is just sort of like, I don't know, let's try this. Maybe they'll like this.
Yeah, and with the really dramatic points changes that they've got, which are all basically for the down, they're almost coming across like a horde army.
Yeah, they've become a horde army.
Which also doesn't feel like the Votann should be a horde army. No. So, and especially when they've got such a limited model range as well, so that you're kind of then forced to repeat the same thing over and over again. So yeah, it just feels, I think they need a new codex. I'd be very much looking forward to some significant detachment changes and some, more interesting things, and hopefully a new unit or two just to help spice things up and flesh that faction out. So moving on to the final one, which is Space Marines. It's only one change, but again, fairly significant. It changes the Desolation squads to a maximum of 5.
I'd prefer it if they changed it to a maximum of 0, because I hate those models so much.
The text actually reads, Desolators, please bring your units into your nearest Games Workshop for a refund.
Yeah.
But also, it's not a full refund. It's a product recall. You know what you did.
It's a product recall, yeah.
The thing is with Space Marines, it's kind of like, this is a very token gesture, because we know that the Codex is coming soon.
Yeah.
Like they've said it.
They
said
it's coming soon, haven't they?
They've
shown new models. So.
Yeah, so it's like we know it's coming soon.
Yeah.
So I can't imagine they're not going to be like, here's like 12 new rules changes which are coming in the Codex. Like they're just going to be like, no, this is the change. That's probably in the Codex. If it's not in the Codex. Well, if it's not in the, it may very well not be in the Codex, because the Codex probably went to print about 9 months ago.
Well,
that's how lead times work.
Exactly.
But this is the updated version, so this is what you use. Yeah. It's fine. I know that there's, Desolators have obviously been doing the rounds for some time, but that is more of a problem of blast and indirect.
Yes.
I'm really surprised we didn't see any indirect changes.
Yeah, agreed.
I'm really surprised.
Yeah.
But instead, they've gone, put the points up. Everything indirect, put the points up. Put the points up. And it's like, no, just change it back to the 9th edition version.
Yeah.
Let it start. Or in my version, which is they only ever hit on 6s.
Yeah.
Deal with it.
Yeah.
You can't see it. You can't see. You can't see it. Don't care how good you are. You can't see it. Yeah. No, but what about the technology allows you to see? That's what special rules are for. Yeah. Things like, I don't know, the Sentinel rule.
Yeah.
That Sentinels have, because they are spotters, land speeders.
Yeah, all right. If an Astartes unit has a special omniscope that helps them, it gives them a +1, so they hit on 5s.
Exactly. Just set their ballistic skill to 6. That's all.
Yeah. No, I completely agree with that. So look, that's all of the actual core changes across the factions and the rules themselves. We'll cover some of the points now in just a moment. So with the points in hand and having scoured them across all of the factions, we want to cover some of the Boogeymen factions first and then just give you a general idea of what's happening with the rest. So generally speaking, across all of the factions, the points have gone down actually favorably, except with the boogeymen, which will kick off with the Adeptus Custodes. So actually, on top of your unit limit caps, you do have increases on all of your mainstay units. They have decreased some of the units, such as the Praetors, which weren't getting as much play, or if any play at all. But generally speaking, Trajan Valorous went up like a comical 10 or 15 points.
He's still very good,
but he's still pretty much an auto take. But generally speaking, as a custody player, you have been hit a little bit. How that will shake up the meta, I suppose, remains to be seen. Let's go over to Aeldari next, which of course are the big rookie men of competitive 40k at the moment. So they have seen some points increases, including on things like fire prisms, which I think have gone up an extra 30 points each now. So plus 90 points if you're taking 3. However, their core rules remain the same. They can still effectively fire out of line of sight. Avatar's gone up as well. The Incarn's gone up. So, you know, these models, which are basically in most Aeldari armies, have all gone up. Farseer, Skyrun, Eldred, Ulthran, all this sort of jazz. But ultimately, they're still going to be really good at doing what they're doing. Wraith Knight did go up too.
He did.
Not enough?
Not just the Wraith Knight, I just think the Eldar in general, I don't think they went up enough. I don't feel, it doesn't feel like that they've received enough of a army ability nerf, and I use the term that I dislike, but in terms of, you know, you compare it to the other boogeymen, Custodes, Genestealer Cults, they received points increases and army rule changes. Yeah, Phantasm's changed, great. I would have been changing that detachment rule so you can reroll a hit or a wound. I'd have been making fate dice. No, they don't trigger sustained hits or devastating wounds. Like, a Wraith Knight can't do 54 mortal wounds to a unit anymore, but you can still basically one-shot any vehicle in the game because you're not getting any saves. You just go, there's a 6, 2d6 damage.
The point increases help, but it doesn't fix the fundamental issues that are on the data sheets. In the army rules, it's just sort of...
The rules themselves are still great. Their army rules are still fantastic. Their detachment ability is still one of the best in the game. And here's the thing. Eldar are up here, Custodes and Genestealer Cults down here. Cool, all right, well, we've reduced their points and changed their army roll. Okay, well, we've reduced their points and changed their army roll. Like, that's all it's gonna do. It's like, now they might drop to a 62% win rate. It's still gross, it's still not balanced. I don't think they've done enough. I don't think it's enough. Now, I don't wanna see them go, an Avatar Arcane's 900 points.
No, of course not.
But it's like, realistically, it's like...
So he did go up like 40 odd points, I think.
Yeah, but like, realistically, you know, like at Nova, it was, you know, it was like, you know, it's an Aeldari mirror match at the Goonhammer Open recently. It was an Aeldari mirror match. Like, all these armies are basically just gonna be the same. They go, I guess I'll just drop like a unit of something. I'll drop a unit of 5 Wraithguard. I've probably got enough points to do that. I might drop a Warwalker. I might get really wacky and drop the Avatar and then just put in a bunch of Wind Riders. Like, you know, like, it's not gonna change anything. And the other points changes are just, okay, like, there's just more of me to kill, I guess. Like, the devastating wounds change will have an impact.
Yeah, it definitely will.
You know, the points changes, it will have an impact. I just don't think, you're not suddenly going to go for an army that's gone from, what, a 74% win rate down to the magical Goldilocks zone of like the 45 to 55. It's not going to happen with these points changes. If they do, I'll buy a hat and I'll eat it. Again, it's happened once before. Look, here's the thing, I would love to be wrong about that. And I'm sure there's plenty of other people that play competitive 40k, because I observe it, I watch it, I don't participate, but I'm sure there's plenty of people that play competitive a lot more frequently and a lot more in depth than I do, and look at it through a much more sort of focused lens. You tell me in the comments, is this going to be enough? Agree with me, disagree with me? I don't think it is.
Yeah, it remains to be seen, but I feel, you know, there's still going to be a really strong army faction. I think that's the key takeaway. So, and in some ways, that's great. If you're an Eldar fan, you're still going to have an army which you can play with, which is cool. But are you still going to be top dogs? Yeah, maybe. We shall see. Genestealer Cult, having said that, I mean, you've just mentioned that they did have some...
pretty much everything has gone up in points. Genestealers went down. The Goliath stayed the same. You know, it's like, fine, as I mentioned earlier, the double whammy that Games Workshop like to do when it comes to here's a rules nerf and a points change, fine. And therein lies the irony. They didn't do that for Eldar. No. Phantasm changes to infantry only is a big change. You can still do it on your Wraithguard. You can still do it on your Dire Avengers, your Warp Spiders. Like, it's still very powerful. We mentioned Custodes, we mentioned Genestealer Cults, we mentioned Aeldari.
Well, basically everything else has gone down, effectively.
Pretty much.
Everything else has gone down. So everyone else's armies have gotten
Necrons
bigger.
did receive some points increases
Yes,
in some
that's
of, like Lichguard went up,
Yeah.
Doomsday Arcs went up, the Reanimator went up, only 10 points though.
Yeah.
He's still an auto take.
Yeah.
You know, fine. But, you know, Scorpex went down. A lot of the armies, if you're building a balanced army, you've probably stayed exactly the same.
Yeah.
So like, I was looking at it as like, oh, Lichguard have gone up 35 points. And that's yeah, but those characters have gone down 5 points. My Scorpex has gone down 30 points. So I'm exactly the same as I was because I've built a balanced army.
Because you weren't spamming.
Because I wasn't spamming something. But some of the other, like Admech, just points drops across the board.
Admech, Death Guard, and Votann are the big ones for me. So yeah, Admech getting the drop probably will help them out because, I mean, it just will. Without changing any of their core army rules, it's sort of the best that you can do in that situation. Death Guard have had significant points reduction.
Yeah, massive.
I think there's still going to be probably a tilt. If you're playing competitively or really focused match play, you're probably still going to tilt towards Demon Engines because they have bigger point drops than anything. Like a Fetid Bloat Drone is now 100 points.
It was already one of the best units.
So cheap. Yeah. So you're probably still going to do that. You will be able to have a better chance of having tilting away from that and having a more balanced list. Like Plague Marines have come down quite a lot, as have other things. But like the Blightlord Terminators have had a reduction, but they're still rubbish.
Yeah, it's their rule. Their rule is the key thing. There,
yeah, for sure. And with Votann, they've had such a huge decrease in points. We can't even play our army at 2,000 points.
We can't play 2,000
add
game.
more units.
It's massive.
Like characters are down by 25. Like the heck, like the Berserks went from 130 to 100. Now they die in droves.
They do.
But it's like that's a big drop.
Yeah,
that's a big drop.
Yeah, it's crazy. So they've definitely had a massive one. Again, is it going to be enough to make them more playable with the issues with the data sheets and army rules? Don't know. It's going to take a bit of time. It will certainly help, but it doesn't fix some of the fundamental issues that are sort of in their core rules.
You've definitely seen that. I think the melee armies in general have been they've been a bit more kind to them, but the Wild Eaters as well, Blood Angels as well, also had significant drops. So
Drakari have received big drops. I think Orcs have received quite a few drops. Tau have received like pretty much drops across the board, which, you know, from a Tau, you know, it's not a melee army, but it's an army that does one thing.
Yes, that's
and
right.
were struggling. Demons, I think, got the short end of the stick in this points drop.
I think they've had the shorter end of the stick in 10th edition in general.
I think so, and the reason for that is like all the big stuff has gone up in points, makes sense. All the little stuff has gone down in points, makes sense. If you were running competitive demons, you were running all big stuff and maybe some Nurglings, the Changeling, things like that. Nurglings have gone down in points, Changeling's gone up in points, all the big stuff's gone up in points. So you're probably at the stage where you just go, I guess I'll just drop a Nurgling base. If you were running a balance, and this is the opposite to the Necron example that I gave, if I'm running a balanced army of demons, I've probably got about the same thing. And I go, well, Chef, that was great. Yeah, for Necrons it was great because they're already good. Demons kind of go, I'm a wet noodle.
Yeah.
Like I'm a melee only wet noodle. I'm still not paying 140 points for 10 Bloodletters.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not. Like, they hit hard, but they die horribly, and they can't get anywhere. Yeah, but they could deep strike 6 inches away. Yeah, if you set it up. I still think they're just too expensive for what they do.
Yeah. Well, and look, the proof's in the pudding. They're not getting 70% win rates, are they?
And certainly not with Bloodletters, like like big demons. Yeah, I think that's it there. Blood Angels, okay. I'm going to talk about this now. I do not like the Blood Angels changes.
Tell me.
Because there's still no reason to run Sanguinary Guard because you've still got access to 30 Death Company with Power Fists for the same cost.
They put down in points.
And they put them down in points.
Put the best unit in there down in points.
But this is just the problem with I really hope that 6 months down the line, Games Workshop go, they hold their hands up and go, everyone on the internet, on YouTube, on social media was correct. The point system, power level, isn't the one. We're not going to go back to full granularity. I don't care if your sergeant has a plasma pistol. I don't care if you have a hunter-killer missile on your Rhino. That's fun. Chaos Space Marines, when was the last time you ran Havoc launchers? Never. Now, Havoc launchers everywhere because it's fun. What I do care about is going, well, this chainsword gets an extra attack. Oh, okay. What does a Power Fist do? Well, it doubles my strength, doubles my AP, doubles my damage. but you lose an attack. It's not worth. That's not worth the same points.
Exactly.
Like
No,
things
not.
like that.
I agree. I'm a big advocate of bringing some of the granularity.
Some of it.
Some, yeah.
You
Not all
don't
of
need
it.
to bring it all, but bringing back some just makes sense.
Well, I'll use the Acolyte hybrids as another example. So Acolyte hybrids for Genestealer Cults, the common issue is they are dying, they're coming back to life with their demolition charges with like 8d6 plus 5 million strength 12 minus 2 damage, 3 shots, whatever it is, for like 75 points. All they had to do was go, rather than go, you're up 10 points.
Yeah.
But if I was running a melee unit, which is not the correct choice, and this is the problem with the war gear stuff, it's not the correct choice, I'm still worse off, but I'm paying for the sins of the powerful choice.
Yeah.
All they had to do was go, Acolyte hybrid, 75 points. Demolition charges, 10 points.
Exactly.
But I only want to run one demolition charge, still 10 points.
Yeah.
But what if I want to run 2 demolition charges, 10 points?
Yeah.
You get a bulk buy discount.
Yeah, the point is that there is an increase
Yeah.
for running it. And look, on that note, I think we should wrap up the points. You know, we've covered pretty much everything in this data slate. Obviously, you can check out the individual points from Games Workshop. We might have an update coming to our website in the future as well, where you've got some differentials. If we can get that done for you in due course, we will. But for now, that's been it from us. Let us know what you think of it in the comments below. Are these data slate changes enough? Are the points changes enough? Are we going to see some meta changes? Is it going to increase your enjoyment of the game? We'd love to hear from you. For now, I've been Lawrence. This has been Chef. This has been The Beard. And we'll see you in another video very, very soon. Bye-bye.